Let's reason. Thanks for your video. um, I think one of you are the few Jehovah's Witnesses that stepped up and actually made a video. I'm very proud of you. Um, Number two, the Watchtower's approach to the soul or death or spirit has always been very unspiritual, and it's very kind of mechanical, or they treat it as kind of some kind of technical, because the metaphor they use always is like appliances, like fans, radios, electricity, and so forth. Um, I think that's the approach I'm going to take, and I hope you can follow me. And I want you to comment on this. Focus. I think you've spent a lot of time trying to define what spirit is, what soul is, and so forth. It's very basic and simple. Let's look at it this way. I'm going to equate a human being. I'm going to use the metaphor of water. See, I'm going to use the Watchtower approach. Water contains two ingredients in it. It's got hydrogen and oxygen. So once we reverse the process of water, we break it down, what do we get? We reverse it, so the water becomes irrelevant. It's not water anymore because we've backed up the truck, so we've got oxygen and hydrogen, right? Okay. Let's look at human being. Human being is put together, just like he said in Genesis 2:17, I believe, by two ingredients. One is clay, which is the flesh is clay, and the other one is the Spirit of God, which is the breath of God that made it soul. So without the breath of God, the clay cannot be soul. So okay, let's stop. Let's back that up. Now a man falls and dies, right? This is very simple. We're backing it up. It's technical terms, technical explanation. We die, and we revert. You see, we break it down. Let's break ourselves down logically. This is, logical argument, right? We broken down the flesh, the clay goes back to the dirt. And the question is, where does the other ingredient go? Remember? We're reversing the process. Ecclesiastes 12:7 was, I think, the most beautiful, accurate, in regards the complete definition of what happens to a person when he falls. I think he defined that when we die, we like Lazarus, he said, we fall asleep. The reason they call it falling asleep is actually a dead person resembles a person that's falling asleep. That's it. That's it. But you see what I'm saying? Define that. So when a person collapses, the flesh goes back to the dirt where it came from. Now back up to Genesis 2:17 and look at the second ingredient that came to make it a living soul. Without that, the clay was never soul. So what happens to that? Ecclesiastes 12:7 explains it. He completes it. It goes back to God who gave it, right? And the argument here is, what did God's breath bring into the clay? Adam standing there. Adam was not thinking before that breath of God came into him. Adam's heart wasn't beating. His lungs weren't functioning. So the Watchtower institution tends to strip away the power of that major ingredient that came from God. Now, if it was 50-50, then we could, you know what I mean? So I'd like to think God is like the H. He's got two parts in it. And we are the O, right? Because before God's breath, my friend, we were nothing but stiff, a lump of clay. And then here comes then Adam's able to blink his eyes, reason. His heart was beating all of a sudden, the blood is flowing, lungs are functioning. Right? He's able to walk, prior to, you see, all those ingredients came from the second part. So for you to say, our thoughts perish, wait a minute. Because if we break down the, if we're going to argue, if we break down human being, the thoughts can't perish, because if we reverse the bus, the clay wasn't thinking when he's standing there. He wasn't thinking. The thinking started when the second ingredient came, which Ecclesiastes 12:7 says what? It goes back. So it takes what? The thoughtness of that clay, the heartbeatness of that clay, the reasoning of that clay, the softness, the texture of that clay is gone with the second ingredient, metaphorically, the hydrogen, the two part. So the two parts came from the second part from God. Before then, we only had clay. I need you to focus on that. We're speaking layman's term, you see, in chemistry. I appreciate your video, man. I'm so delighted.